am calling to order the Office of our Workforce Committee meeting to order. I wanted to invite the director and his team from the Office of Equal Opportunity to the table so that we can go over your presentation as we are doing this operational review. Introduce yourselves, and then we'll get started with the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Tyson Mitchell, Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity, and I have with me Assistant Director Michael Curry and my wonderful team behind me who makes it all happen. And none of this would happen but for them. So I wanted to send a shout out to them. All right, let's get rocking and rolling here. As you all know, OEO's work falls into 4 major categories: certifications, bid and proposal evaluations, contract compliance, which is our monitoring projects, just how we monitor projects, and the wonderful community benefits agreements that have been added. Speaking about certifications, OEO certifies contracts in the following categories: MBEs, Minority Business Enterprise, Female Business Enterprise, and Cleveland Small Business. As you can see, these are the numbers from 2003 to 2024. In 23, we had 305 MBEs, and in 24, we have 444. Also wanted to point out we drilled down a little further to determine the number of Hispanic businesses in the community. We had 41 in 2023 and 54 in 2024. As you can see, in 2024, we had 240 female businesses and 163 Cleveland small businesses, for a total of 847 certified companies within our database, and that's an increase of 200. And I want to also point out that we did this year, for the first time ever, we did a Hispanic outreach event. They had the community, 65 people were registered. We had about 36 come to City Hall. It was called Doing Business with City Hall. Often one of the issues is people are intimidated with the bidding process, and it's just truly intimidating. So we started this. They were so excited. They said it's the first time someone has ever reached out to them from OEO, and we also combined it with the Hispanic artwork that was on the second floor. So it was a great event to be a part of. During our bid evaluations, we look at contracts greater than $50,000. And we set goals with those contracts, generally 15% minorities, 7% female, and 8% small business, for a total of 30%. And main things we look for is a good faith effort from the contractors in trying to make those goals. As it says here, these are goals and they are not quotas. So we really like to point that out, especially in this environment that we're moving towards. We also want to ensure that our bidders, they identify their contractors beforehand as a part of their bid. They say, these are the people we're going to use, and we're going to make these numbers. So we really focus on having a plan beforehand as opposed to trying to figure out a plan during the project. Another part of our contract compliance monitoring is once the contract is finalized, we monitor the contract. So we have the Section 187 and we have the Section 188 Fannie Lewis law, and these contracts are monitored through our B2G Now software and our LCP Tracker software. These costs have been going up, particularly because of the amount of contracts that we monitor. So if you have 200 million one year, your price is this, and then as we are increasing the amount of contracts, our numbers are going up. So that software goes up to about $200,000 a year.
Hi, Director, just a question. With these acronyms, is that the actual name, or do those things stand for something? The B2G Now, or the LCP?
Oh, okay.
Those are the actual names. Okay, thank you.
All right. Then as a project moves on, part of our monitoring, we do the closeout. This is a significant process that we go through. Oftentimes contracts take construction contracts or projects takes 1 to 3 years to complete. And so we have something called retainage that we withhold, and then to make sure that all the sign-offs are made, that they've done what they're supposed to do. That retainage becomes a big issue, and really contractors and developers are pushing to try to get those things removed, but we stand firm firm on retainage. Penalties. Penalties for noncompliance are rare, and so one of the reasons is because we work with them during the process. And so if something is, if there's no way to subcontract something, we reduce the goal at the beginning. Or sometimes during a project, a developer may agree to a goal, and then they hit a snag, and they say, we cannot make this goal. And if they have a good reason, we'll reduce the goal. So we really work with them during the project to try to avoid penalties. Oftentimes, people look at penalties and say, well, why don't you have more? Well, it's because we're working with them throughout the project. And also, some of the penalties that we assessed previously were due to COVID-related matters. As I said before, these construction projects go from 1 to 3, 4 years, and so when we look back and see why they were short, a lot of times it was because of COVID. So some of those some of those penalties we would waive. As you see in '24, we collected $61,766 in OEO penalties over 9 projects. All right, 2024 public contracts. During 2024, we had $313 million worth of public contracts that came through OEO, our monitoring. As you see, we have minus the $80 million. Those were contracts that we could not, it was not practical to have subcontracting on, so that's when we generally waive those goals. So it leaves us with $232 million of addressable spend over 91 contracts. And just to give you an idea of some of the things of why we waive some goals, sometimes it's specialty contracts, sometimes it's vehicle purchases, specialized work such as painting the water tower. So you can find painters, but you're not going to find, it's hard to find some companies that are going to go up on a tall scaffolding to paint a water tower. You have software and IT that's impracticable to subcontract a lot of times, and sometimes consulting projects depending on what they are. So for 2024, we had $12.3 million of MBE spend, $33.7 million of FBE spend, and $97.6 million of Cleveland small business spend for 2024. All right. And at this moment, we're going to talk a little bit about community benefits, but wanted to take the opportunity to thank Council for creating community benefits and specifically putting it with OEO in our office and allowing us to lead community benefits, because it has been a wonderful process, and we really started from scratch in designing what this process looks. So thank you for entrusting us with that. All right, we call these our transformative commitments. These are, keep in mind, commitments that are from this community benefits agreement. We have not, these things are ongoing. We signed 19 community benefits agreements in 2024, totaling representing over $503 million in total project cost, $285 million in hard construction cost, and $43 million in city financial incentive. That city financial incentive ranges from TIFs, grants, loans, tax abatement, and city-funded infrastructure improvements. We're happy to report that we have commitments of $92 million of diverse spend, and that's broken up in $44 million of MBE, $24 million of FBE, and $24 million of CSB. Those are the commitments we have thus far for 2024. It took on average 82 days to negotiate and draft our expanded community benefit agreements, and those are the projects over $20 million. What happens is it doesn't take, as it says, negotiation. It doesn't take 82 days to write it, but the negotiation becomes the part that takes the longest. And part of what we got also in community benefits during 24 is 40 mentor-protege relationships, 55 apprenticeships, and 63 paid internships for a total of, that totals a little office of $32,000 for CMSD students. So to pocket and to get experience on internships that are funded through the community benefits agreement. 44 community engagement meetings, and the last part is the 60 additional community benefits. We have 4 MBE at the partnership, at the construction manager level. We have 9 job fairs that are created through this, 6 lead projects for sustainability, 10 neighborhood infrastructure improvements, 3 affordable housing projects, 2 PLAs were signed, and we had 3 3 developers agree to use CPP as the preferred electric provider, and 1 equity fund contribution during this time. All right, got 2 more pages here. Current staffing, we currently have 12 staff members. We have 0 vacancies. As you can see down at the bottom, we have 4 compliance officers from the community benefits staff that this council gave to OEO. This staff is working diligently, creating the process, refining the process, monitoring compliance. Now we have to monitor these things. When a developer says we're going to have a certain amount of affordable housing, we're going to build a park in Huff. Who's monitoring those things going on now? Now we have to monitor those things. And we also are facilitating the warm handoffs with the Cleveland Municipal School District, Tri-C, with internships and apprenticeships. Last page here. And where are we going now with OEO during 2025? One of the things we would like to do is update the construction community on CBA process. There are a lot of questions about the process and highlight the projected impacts. The projected impacts are the things I just went over regarding the $500 million in projected construction costs and how many mentor proteges and all that good stuff. We're talking about having a press conference sometime, an MBE summit. We are currently doing email blasts and webinars and website information. So a lot of this information is about to go up on our website so that they'll be able to see the benefits of the project. Next step is to meet with the Finance Diversity Committee to talk about potential enhancements of the CBA and the Community Equity Fund. What do we do with the Community Equity Fund going forward as a council and administration? How do we put some of that money into the ecosystem to build up businesses? So those are things we got to talk about at some point. And mentor protege build out. One of the things when the legislation was passed, it was stated that there would be a mentor protege. And one of the things we did, we tried to allow developers to kind of run that mentor protege until we get up a mentor protege program, and we've decided to go ahead and bring that in-house. If you look at best practices across the country, they have departments that focus on mentor protege. That's the way we're going to develop the ecosystem going forward, is through true mentor protege and reverse mentor protege relationships. The last point is we are currently revising or looking at a proposal to revise our MBE, FBE Gold program due to the Supreme Court's decision on higher ed and along with the attack on DEI. So we're gonna, I'm not gonna say too much about it unless you all really wanna hear a lot about it, or maybe we'll do it in a different form about where we're going as a Gold program going forward. And that is the end of our presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Director, for giving us that presentation. I just want to see that our president is here, and so wanted to yield a moment for him to ask his questions.
Thank you. First of all, I'm excited. I'm watching Councilwoman House Jones chair, I believe, her first meeting. So this is, okay, this is kind of cool. I'm kind of enjoying this. I came just for that, just to see that. This is kind of cool. But anyway, you mentioned the courts, and that's one of the things that I've been concerned about somewhat. What the courts, as well as we know that the new administration are not big fans of DI. However, a lot of what we built around community benefits has been voluntary. How are you going to continue to kind of massage this in order, through the chair, in order to make sure that we continue to, like, this is something that we're asking you to do as far as voluntary, not necessarily like if you don't do this, this, and this may happen. But if you do agree to this, then you still stand a chance to be penalized. And that's going to be a little bit of a different nuance, but I'm interested in how you might look at navigating that.
Yes. Through the chair to the council president. We are looking at that. We are also concerned about that. The exciting thing about where we are in this, the beauty of the community benefits agreement, is that it's not all not all dealing with race and gender. is dealing with pure community benefits. What are you going to do in exchange for this money? Section 187 and 188 are in the code regardless of the community benefits legislation. So we are going to have to work through that part, even though we've kind of piggybacked and brought the 187 and 188 over to the community benefits agreement, to the CBO legislation. We're going to have to adjust that. So even though that's voluntary, there are going to be people who challenge that going forward, but it's going to be harder to challenge the pure community benefits, such as, hey, we're going to do LEED silver program. We're going to build a park. We're going to give a community equity fund contribution. We're going to do interns. Those things are race and gender neutral, so they provide rational. From a Supreme Court standpoint, we have to look at them from a rational basis. The race and gender is going to be a different story. It's going to require race and gender neutral, but I'll say race and gender conscious adjustments. So they'll be there, but we're going to keep the pure community benefits, but the Section 187 and 188, we're going to have to adjust a bit.
Thank you. The second question, Madam Chair, is I said you said 92 million in MBE, FBE, CSB spend. Do you have a breakdown to see which companies? Because one of the things that we wanted to do is to try to flatten it out so that it wasn't just the same MBE, FBE, CSB folks. And so have you shown or seen where we're actually trying to grow? Because one of the reasons we put the community benefits agreement in place is so that we could take some mid-tier developers, help move them up to being primes, or seeing if they could do joint ventures with each other to actually go after the entire projects, move some of the smaller vendors into mid-tier, and then also get some people into the workforce and those kind of things. So have you looked and seen where the growth of some of the smaller vendors have increased, and do you have a breakdown of that $92 million spend?
Through the chair to the council president, the $92 million of a diverse spend, $44 million would be MBE. So $44 million. So if we just stop right there and look right there. And also talked about, we have 4 MBEs that are going to be at the partner level. So that's at the construction manager level, that's at the prime level, that's at the owner's rep level. So that in and of itself, I don't want to overstate, is historic, and it rarely ever happens there. So you get it at the top. I do see some of the same companies that are around. So one of the things we should do is very similar to what they did on the Opportunity Corridor. They created a new contract goal, a new contractor goal, a goal to use someone you had not used previously. So we are talking about that in OEO. How do we add that to because companies are comfortable using who they use. So if we have to try to create an incentive to use, or a goal to use contractors you have not used before. So we are looking at $44 million of projected MBE spend through 2024.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, as I close out, the only thing that I will say is that we're going to have to work very close with you as a council, because we know that this DEI wave is going to come at us big time, and they're going to try to press against this. We also don't have to vote for some of these development projects. So we need to make sure that we're very well educated on what people are voluntarily trying to do to show their goodwill towards our city, and what people are, versus what people are mandated to do. So, that's going to be a tricky tightrope to watch, but we need to make sure that we monitor that closely, and that if we do see developers that are not being good actors and not working with this council and not working with you, then we need to know so that we don't put ourselves in a situation where we're supporting contractors that just basically say they're not going to do any DEI. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that we are very, very keen on growing some of the small firms and also getting some of the small businesses in there, even if it's something that you're doing where we can invite some of these small firms, because I'm tired of some of these developers that I meet with telling me that they're having a hard time finding the people to do the work. And what I've committed to work with them and you to do is to try to convene settings where we can actually bring in these small developers so that they can be interfaced with some of these big developers, so that they can develop the relationships that are needed in order to make sure that we get rid of that argument that we can't bring in enough people to do the work. So thank you, and I want to commend your department. You're one of the departments that have worked closely with council. Whenever we have given you people to hire, you have hired them. Whenever we have worked closely with the, things like the scorecard and other things, you have been a very collaborative partner, and really appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next, we'll have Councilmember Spencer.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Jones, Chairwoman. I wanted to, let's see, start with going back up to your first slide and looking at your growth, your overall total company certified. What would you say is the most significant factor that contributed to that overall increase from 2023 to 2024?
Yes, through the chair to
Through the chair.
Through the chair to the council person. I believe that the growth is because we increased the our certification process. The certification was 1 year. You get certified for 1 year. We increased it to 2 years. Oftentimes, what happens is people just forget to recertify. And so when we come in front of you, we look at the numbers we have in front of us, and so you'll see a drop. Well, they're still out there working. They're just not certified right now. So we increased it to 2 years. And I think that's a direct correlation into the amount of the number of firms that we have that are still on the list. Also, this council and this administration has made a concerted effort to tell people that we're going to use minorities and females more on our projects. And it's important to us. I'm having developers, we created expectation. If you look at cities like Atlanta with Maynard Jackson, who had started a lot of this, there's an expectation when you go to Atlanta that you are going to make these numbers and you're going to have a minority or female partner on your project. We are starting that, and I see it. So developers are coming with their plans a little better, a little more baked, and so that's what's going on also.
And then, but you did mention one example of a special event. It was a Hispanic business fair, and I'm curious to know if you also consider that to be an important approach going forward. Was that the first one? How often are these held? Was that the first one? If not, how many of these types of business fairs are held annually? And is that a practice that will continue through the chairwoman?
Yes, through the chair to the council person. This was the first one. I am particularly proud of it. It is very important for me, and I think for the city, I'm sorry, not for me, for the city to connect with the Hispanic, my brown brothers and sisters. I made the point, when I look at these projects, I don't see them. And so that's an issue, and I spoke with the mayor about it. He said, well, let's have this event. Let's bring them to City Hall. And so we brought them to City Hall to say, hey, we care about you and we want to partner with you. And so that was very important. So we're looking forward to having one of these. We had it in conjunction with the Hispanic artwork on the second floor. Next time we'll have it probably more in the summer. And we're going to bring them back and have specific classes, because the paperwork honestly is intimidating. And those who do not have the flashlight, they don't fare well. If you forget that one little form, I probably shouldn't say this, but if you forget that one form that I can't stand, that you don't do business in some country somewhere, that doesn't apply anymore. If you forget that form, your bid is thrown out. So things like that, we have to show them, walk them through the paperwork, and so we're looking forward to doing many of those going forward.
Great. And then just to build off of that, if you want to support these and bring these businesses to these types of events, how do you do the outreach to invite them to the table in the first place? How are these small businesses identified in the community, invited, and ultimately come to City Hall to participate in these types of sessions? How does that outreach process work?
Yep. Through the chair to the council person. First, we started with our database. That database that's there that has the 847, or at that point, probably, somewhere between 647 and 847. We started by sending it to those that are there. Secondly, we went to the Hispanic serving organizations and got the word out through there. We also went citywide our Facebook and all those accounts to get the word out. So that's how we got 65 people to register to come to this event. And we put some great people on the program. We had Jose Feliciano, Romanita Vargas, Janice Contreras, and those individuals to get the word out.
So sounds like a model worth replicating.
Yes.
And one more question on this, and then I want to pivot to community benefits agreements. But for my knowledge, once you are on the list, once you're one of those 847 businesses, is one of the benefits you get, for lack of a better word, every time a contract is let out by the city, would you be notified? Or how, once you're certified, how do businesses then take advantage of those actual bidding opportunities?
Through the chair to the council person, I think that is a place that we need to improve, because there's some disagreement on whether we should send out notifications to our certified database, even not before they're public, when they're public. So if it goes out at 12:01, there's some disagreement as to whether we should send that information to our database. I take the position that we should, and that's part of the benefit of being certified, is that you receive notice of things that are going on. And also, it's something I call it the now what. A lot of our contractors get certified, and then they expect contracts to rain down on them. And that's the now what. We have to figure out a better process to engage them, because some of these contractors they're not going to get a call from Bedrock, from Sherwin-Williams, because they're at a different level. But that doesn't mean there are not contracts. So where we want to focus is the contracts under $50,000. Those are opportunities to be more intentional. So that's where we're going. But to answer your question, we do not currently send out every package that's on the city's database that comes through purchasing. We do not.
Okay, I'm actually really glad this came up, because part of me assumed that was already happening. So this is great. It's a great discussion, and great
Yes.
to know that this is a potential area where there could be growth. I mean, so to clarify, I'm looking at the one slide that showed that we had 91, in 2024, there were 91 public contracts with goals. And what we're saying is, at this point, even if you are a certified minority business with the city of Cleveland, you're not necessarily getting notification of those bidding opportunities. However, that I would submit that that's something that I would expect, one less barrier for those businesses to encounter, especially as they're learning about the now what, right?
Right.
How do you actually take advantage and use this certification? Am I on the same page when I'm repeating back what I'm saying through our chairwoman?
Through the chair to the councilperson, yes, you are.
Okay.
And also, those are like large contracts, and so we're kind of expecting the developer to reach out when they want to make their
see.
goals. So we're expecting them to go through our database. If they ask us for specifics, like, hey, you have any drywallers, we'll do that. But you're all right. It is something we need to address.
Okay, and then, thank you. So then to further clarify, how many public contracts were there with the more that $50,000 threshold?
Under?
Well, I guess the over, right? Because the over is what triggers the OEO requirements?
The 170, is that the 178?
Yes.
Yeah.
178.
178 contracts over 50,000.
170. I'm not sure if I saw that.
That's on our, wait, I'm
Oh, there it is, 100. Okay, so sorry. So yeah, maybe I was referring more to the 178 then. Those would be the type of, hey, this bidding opportunity has just been released.
Right.
And the network knows about it. Okay, thank you. I wanted to take a couple minutes to touch on the new community benefits agreement process, and as a member of the Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, I'm looking forward to that conversation with the committee about the items you mentioned about enhancements in the Community Equity Fund. So I'll look forward to that discussion. But I wanted to, just in terms of process, I do have a few projects, and Mr. Curry is familiar with them also in my ward. I have a few projects that are kind of, we have one CBA signed, and then there are a couple others bubbling up. Who actually, from OEO's perspective, does the negotiation on the agreement itself? In other words, I've seen, it seems like there's a collaboration with different departments. So sometimes it's community development that's involved, sometimes it's economic development. When it comes to actually that negotiated part of the agreement, from OEO's perspective, who's doing the negotiating? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the council person. Primarily, all of the negotiation goes through OEO. A combination of myself, assistant director, and our CBA team. So some of our standard ones are very standard. So there's not a lot of under $20 million. There's not a lot of negotiation. So from a separation of duties, we do the negotiation. So these other departments kind of help facilitate, bring partners together, bring the groups together, but OEO is leading negotiations. And I don't say that selfishly, I say that more from a separation of duties standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to, I mean, I think we're all in a learning process with this too. And I might want to circle back on a couple that are pending in terms of making sure that the negotiation is streamlined between also the council person obviously has a perspective on what would be considered a valuable benefit for the community, so.
And let me also add to that, through the chair, through the council person, we do reach out to the other departments. So like, we're not affordable housing experts.
Right. So
when a developer is talking about we're going to do affordable housing, I check with community development. Hey, does this make sense? How long should we do the restrictive covenant? Should we put a deed restriction on it? Those types of things. What AMI are we going to use? So we don't try to play expert on everything, but where we need help, we reach out.
Great. Okay, and then one last question, Madam Chair. Can you remind me, Director, through the chair, about the Community Equity Fund itself, just the definition of what is the Community Equity Fund?
Through the chair to the council person, I am excited that we added the Community Equity Fund to the legislation of the Community Benefits Ordinance. It provides an opportunity for developers to, some things they might not have the capacity to do, or I'll say appetite to do. But we want to give them an opportunity to say, hey, we'll make a contribution into the fund, and what we as a city do with that fund is on us. And we expect, we've advertised that it will be placed into the ecosystem at some point to help with building up contractors and the construction workforce.
Okay, great. So through our chair, to clarify, the Community Equity Fund, although it's potentially, well, it will be funded, the uses of the funds have not yet been finalized. Okay, so that's part of the discussion that you hope to have with council and the committee about the future of the community. Okay, and
Yes.
thank you for clarifying. So essentially, this is what I think of as the in lieu of payments. So when a developer says, well, we can't produce X number of affordable housing units, instead of that, we'll contribute to this fund. Is that accurate?
To the chair, to the council person, that is correct. And
Okay.
as of right now, I think and also penalties go in there. So when a developer is short and where there's a penalty, that money will go into the equity fund. So we've had one payment into the equity fund. It's around $100,000 from one particular project going forward. So there's $100,000, to my knowledge, sitting there now.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Next, we have Councilman Slife.
Thank you, and I think I have the sinking chair, so I win today. Director, last year during budget hearings, in the budget book, it says that at that time there were 11 positions in the department, 2 were vacant. Could you give an update on the staffing level and the number of vacancies?
Through the chair to the council person, we are currently fully staffed as of 3 weeks ago. So we hired our last person that you all have given us a position, and I'm proud to say that that person did come from the Hispanic community, and we were very intentional in our work.
Okay, thank you. So fully staffed at 11?
No, we're at, excuse me, through the chair to the council person, we are at 12.
12, okay. And I think it's worth noting, you know, I think there's been a slow uptick in the past couple years of certifications. Like, you can kind of tell that we're coming back from COVID, but I think the uptick from, 23 to 24 is pretty notable. So I want to just call that out and give a little bit of a commendation. I always think it's helpful to kind of remind ourselves and remind anyone listening, the reason the Office of Equal Opportunity is able to essentially, as I understand it, so correct me if I'm wrong, is able to achieve its goals around, especially really around minority and female hiring, is based on a disparity study. And in layman's terms, if you consider Cuyahoga County is the labor market, let's say Cuyahoga County is 1/3 black, which is less than the city, but still very substantial. Theoretically, 1/3 of electricians and plumbers and any position, as well as the ownership of that business, should be reflective of that wider regional diversity. And the fact is that we don't have that. So we are not just doing this because we think it's the right thing to do, which it is, but we are doing it because there are actually data demonstrating the disparity that we are trying to correct for. Correct me if I'm wrong before I go way too far.
Through the chair to the
in the wrong
councilperson,
direction.
that is correct.
So my other understanding is that this disparity study is not just static from one point in time, but they are updated periodically, and theoretically, much like I guess like the Cancer Society and other things that the goal is to almost to not exist at some point. The goal of OEO, arguably, in this task, is to essentially like work itself out of business, and we are nowhere near correcting this disparity. Can you give an update on when the next disparity study would take place and sort of where we are with just trying to close this gap at a high level?
Yes. Through the chair to the councilperson, the last disparity study that City of Cleveland conducted, I think was 2010, was the disparity study. We have looked at doing another disparity study. It was on the advice of, I would say, our previous council that did the disparity study, that it was stated that disparity studies will not help you going forward. So we made a conscious decision to not spend $1 million, $1.5 million on a disparity study that will not help us going forward. Actually, I'm scheduled to be on a call tomorrow to talk more about that and what that looks like. But there's a Sixth Circuit case that says the disparity study will not help you. So a decision was made not to spend $1 million or so in 18 months to do a disparity study that will not help us. We are going to move towards changing our goal program more towards race and gender neutral, but race and gender conscious is what we're moving forward.
Sure, and maybe this is my point to say that, but that's all. I understand that's a very pragmatic financial decision. It's also just downright ridiculous, and I am of the opinion that, if you ask me for. If you ask me, Councilman House, for money for lunch, and I hand you a Wendy's gift card, like that's what I'm giving. Don't take my money if you don't want it. That's what I got. If you don't want to deal with the City of Cleveland's goals and doing what is the right thing to do, which is to help people better themselves, then there are plenty of banks that can offer you money at a higher interest rate. So I don't know why, or there are plenty of professional opportunities to not bid with the City of Cleveland. So I am philosophically frustrated by the state that we're in, but I understand that it's pragmatic for us to react to it. But we have, unfortunately, many people who are comfortable with furthering disparities, socioeconomic disparities, racial disparities that have caused our society not just to not be able to advance as a society, but have also affect us really of the bottom line. So it's all of it is just absolutely asinine, and I feel urged to call it out when I see it. You had mentioned director, so thank you for that, and I think it is useful to know if there is not a formal study when necessarily we need it. The fact of the matter is that in a hyper-diverse region, we do not have the diversity that you would statistically expect in the labor force, and especially within the ownership of businesses. So that is something that we should all aspire to correct and collaborate together, because I think we all have our heads on our shoulders. Director, you had mentioned some intimidation about the bidding process, and I can imagine that there's sort of a scared to confused continuum. I'm wondering if you could just elaborate it on a little bit more, but also to what degree do you help advise maybe back to purchasing, other departments on ways that they can make their processes less scary, less intimidating, so that we're not causing our own bureaucracy to really be the hurdle that is preventing us from getting more people interested in city contracts.
Through the chair to the councilperson, I do want to make it clear that, point out that purchasing does have, they have a list of dates in which they will help vendors, people who want to be vendors, to learn how to bid. I'm not certain how well they are attended, but they do have that on the website, so they are working on that process. So one of the things we look at is, can we remove like under $250,000 under the legislation allows us to, with my signature, I think that Commissioner of Purchasing, to waive bonds under a certain amount. Bonding is an issue for a lot of these smaller companies. And when I look at historically around here, we have not had to sue anybody under a performance bond in a long time, so the risk is low. We have them require them to have insurance. So those are some of the things we're talking about with purchasing. How can we waive some bonds under a certain amount? How do we just show them the process? Because there's some bids that get thrown out because they didn't fill out the OEO forms. And we are in the process of making those forms a little easier, but they just purely forgot about them. And so then we have to issue a no good faith effort. So those are the things we are looking at. And we can't, under the law, we can't help them after the fact, say, hey, you forgot this form. And we don't, and let's keep it, I'm sorry, we don't get into the bidding process, but we see the bids after, but purchasing can't call them and say, hey, you forgot this form, because that's considered a unfair advantage. Sure. So we are looking at some of the ways we can do that, help with that.
Okay, thank you, and I'm hopeful that that's a good two-way street between you and purchasing.
Yes.
You had mentioned that there's some controversy about sending out proactively to certified companies. Can you elaborate on that and the controversy? Who's amongst whom?
Well, I wouldn't, through the chair to the council person, I wouldn't say controversy. I'll just say there's some discussion about, can OEO send out contracts that are in the public domain to our specific 847 database, or break it down a little further. This is, let's say, a landscaping contract. Just break it down and send it to those who do landscaping. Yes, that is an issue.
Right. So I think we would all agree that my landscaping company probably wouldn't be certified, but I don't see any issue with sending out to certified organizations and, quite frankly, offering the ability for anybody to get on an email listserv that says, when things pop up at the city of Cleveland, we're sending it out to everybody just because you got on the email listserv. That seems to be, that doesn't have to be about even offering preferential treatment, but we should certainly be offering proactive information to people to let them know that these opportunities exist, because otherwise things get lost in the mix.
You don't know, just let me interject. I think this is one of the things when there should be a bonus for actually doing the actual work. To expect people who are not doing the work to then get all of the things that should be not a value that we should uphold. And again, it's one of those things offering a suggestion of, as our companies are going through the certification process, just put it as a proactive thing as part of the application process. Would you like to be notified when bid contracts? That's an opt-in system. Therefore, that was a request. This is what we offer, and then we do it. And if someone has a problem with it or anything else, some of the things that we make problems and issues are just ridiculous. And again, having this system where we expect people to be committed to looking at a website every day or every week, that is not realistic. No. And that is not realistic, and we need to do better to communicate the information based on people who have already been through a certification process that we have vetted, right? That's the difference between other people. This is a vetted system. This is somebody that we know has at minimum requirements to do and perform within our system. And so for any partner entity that has an issue with that, I think they should have that conversation. They can directly have this conversation with Cleveland City Council, and we would absolutely engage in that conversation.
Oh, wonderful. And to the chair, to the Madam Chairperson, to the Madam Chairperson, we, like the mayor always talks about, we have to make the easy things easy. And that is an easy thing that can be done. And you're right, the back office is an issue. People are out working in their craft. And so a lot of times they're not sitting at their desk looking at emails all day, but they need to at least get them. So we want to talk about the Community Equity Fund. Those are some things we can do from a back office standpoint. How do we, there's the legal argument of should we do it, and there's the practical argument of how do they get noticed, how do they bid and be a part of that. So we are with you. Definitely.
And it seems to me like the natural outgrowth, and I'll say years ago when I worked in economic development, if someone came forward and said, oh, well, we can't find a female-owned HVAC company, I'd go on the registry and be like, here's a list of female-owned HVAC companies. Like we are doing the other side of the coin, which is giving this information out to people publicly through the website. So it seems natural that we are also making sure that people are aware. We're not causing people to sit back and wait for the phone to ring. We're giving them the opportunity to pick up the phone and call.
Well, and through the chair of the council person, I wanted to respond to your point about your landscaping company. Well, unless you're over 20 million, you would be a CSB. So you would get notification. Your landscape company would get notification of that.
And thank you. That is the small business aspect is one that probably does get lost. Briefly, I think one of the challenges we've seen, and you had kind of mentioned bonding, the challenge of getting subs to be able to move up to primes. There are challenges in securing bonds, and the purpose of this is not to create sort of a menu of subcontractors that are always available. We're trying to get these businesses to grow and be able to compete in their own right. Can you speak to the work that is done to kind of bring businesses, help them grow, help them establish those levels of financial security that they're able to compete for more and larger contracts?
Through the chair to the council person, well, right now, that the Office of Equal Opportunity, that is not within our mission. It is something I would love to expand to, particularly maybe 2025, 2026, is where we will become we need to kind of be a convener of the ecosystem, because there are a lot of organizations that are doing work out there. Everybody's not great at the work they do. So in my humble opinion, I think we need to look and see who's doing what, who does a good job at it. Let them continue to do that, and where there are gaps, then the Office of Equal Opportunity looks to fill those gaps, particularly developing contractors. Because of where we're going with this DEI, we have to prepare our contractors for the open market, and a lot of them are not prepared. We have to encourage joint ventures, almost strongly encourage joint ventures, because some of the projects are too large for a small company to do, and we have to encourage them to come together. So I would love for my department to start working on business development, if you will. So that is a goal that a function we would like to add to OEO at some point.
Okay, I think that's an important growth area, and really figuring out there's a Venn diagram between you all and economic development there. Did you have something?
But if we could, sometimes I'm like, maybe if we can build up our partnerships with those who are doing business development versus expanding out, because I know I'm still looking in there. There's a lot of work that we need to do in the contracting space. Right. And so encouraging to establish strong relationships. So like you said, we're doing the handoff to proven organizations, entities, government entities who are dedicated and have the resources dedicated in this space. I think that we can leverage those partnerships much more intentionally and purposefully than we have. Offered a suggestion.
Madam Chair, that is a great point, and that we wouldn't try to do it all. And that's why I say let's see who's doing what and how good they're doing it, and then maybe we can help them do it better. But we have to help these organizations do it better, if that's the case. So we would love to be a part of that. And one of the things with OEO, I've seen historically somebody come in and say, I want to start a business. I don't know what I'm doing. And we would, I'll say humbly speaking, we would send them off to one of the two of these organizations, not keep track of them, not check back, say how you doing, or where are you in the process. So at minimum, I would love to start doing that to help with the accountability. Because sometimes some of these organizations, we don't hear it to the person's, excuse my language, pissed off and saying that these organizations don't help. So we could have, if we had a check back, we could say, hey, they're not being responsive, so maybe we can be that convener and help out there.
To the chair, I think it's the natural outgrowth, and I think if I permission to get sarcastic for a second, but if I'm the small business landscaper, I worry sometimes that the way the system is set up without thinking about that next step, it almost creates a perverse incentive for me to be the landscaper guy. So a larger entity is relying on me to meet their goals and almost doesn't want me to ever hit $20 million, because then I'm no longer their landscaping guy. So I want to make sure that this is a launch program and not a way to, I want to make sure that we are helping those that are getting certified and not unintentionally helping those, or prioritizing helping those that require subcontractors in order to meet compliance. Right. come back to staffing in a second. Is it possible to get a breakdown through the chair of all the different certifications by type, like almost a giant chart of, how many? And I know there's cross certifications, but I'd especially like to see, are there areas where we feel that our denominator of certifications is growing very well, but we're not seeing comparable growth in different fields? And are these areas where we need to do some kind of outreach to encourage people to maybe get certified or to cause people to maybe explore that field? And what I would want to find out is that our denominator is growing, but it's because of kind of clusters. And what we're actually doing is making a hyper-competitive area when there's actually a lot of opportunities to grow and succeed in a place that maybe someone hasn't explored. So I'm sure that's not an impossible thing to get provided to us through Brooke and policy staff.
And through the chair to the council person, so let me clarify. So particularly like looking at industries, do we have so many painters versus drywall? Are there some gaps that we can be more intentional? Is that kind of your question?
Yes, and I think the data, seeing just the hard data would cause a lot of those questions to be answered, or for, it'd be an interesting exercise.
And I'll give you a quick example of that. When I got here, I kept hearing that we can't find any minority hauling or trucking companies that have their hazmat certification. So on our water projects, we waive those goals a lot with bringing on minority contractors because they don't have their hazmat. And a program was created. So we kept saying that. And it's like, well, why don't we do something about it? So a program was created to help minorities get their hazmat certification. And I can say there are 2 or 3 companies that did go through and complete that. So now we don't have that issue when a majority contractor says we can't find a minority contractor to haul away hazardous dirt because they don't have a certification. Then we can hand them a list of 3 now because of that.
Exactly. I swear I'm almost done. The penalties, the $61,000 in penalties, do you know off the top of your head where those penalties get reported within the city budget? Does that come in as revenue to OEO, or does that hit, where does that hit? Asking because there hasn't been any revenue. This is not intended to be a revenue generating department, but I guess the question is that revenue going elsewhere? Is it being reported as revenue, or is there zero in the budget because there haven't been penalties in the past few years, and this is an indication of us increasing our enforcement?
Through the chair to the councilman, the penalties are put into a Fund 10, a grant fund, essentially. So they don't become part of the general fund. They go into a separate account that is used for OEO staff augmentation and contractor support. So it becomes a separate fund where that money goes. It doesn't go back into general fund or anywhere else. It goes into this Fund 10 where it is used again for staff augmentation and contractor support.
Gotcha. And then through the chair as a follow-up, when was the last time the value of those penalties were analyzed? Or is there a standard, or is it sort of a case-by-case scenario of levying what the penalty would be, the value of it?
Oh, to the councilman, the penalty is calculated based on contract terms. So essentially, where there's a shortfall, that penalty will be calculated on a prorated rate of that shortfall. Typically speaking, for minority, female, or small business shortfalls, the penalty is 25% of the city financial contribution, and so we'll prorate that. So if a contractor were to get to 10% MBE participation versus 15, we would take that remainder and then calculate the penalty based upon that. So everything is formally calculated in terms of an initial contractually set penalty, and then for partial success, the penalty is then prorated to reflect that.
Okay. Is the department able to provide through council staff kind of a breakdown of the 61,766 in penalties, kind of who they were levied to, what the individual penalty was, what percentage of the contract had been completed? I guess what I want to, back when I was in economic development, I remember someone very distinctly saying, hey, we did the math and it makes sense for us just to not adhere to this and pay the penalty. So I want to make sure that we are not creating another perverse incentive for people just to get the money and pay the penalty, and that is actually a pragmatic business decision. That's not the intent of having a penalty somewhere. So if that information is able to be provided too, we can maybe unpack some of that. My last question, I have not had personal experience with the community benefits agreements yet, just the cards haven't fallen into place yet. We said at the top of this, we had 11 head count, we're now at 12. Do we anticipate that there's enough staff to take on what it seems to be an increasing workflow of certifications, an anticipated increase of community benefits agreements? Are we asking for 12 in the budget, or are we anticipating an increase in head count being requested?
Through the chair to the council person, right now we're steady at our numbers. It depends on whether what we're gonna do with this mentor protege program. Mentor protege program, there are cities who have successful mentor protege programs, and they have a couple of folks, that's all they do. They really monitor mentor protege, like the Chicago Transit Authority. They have a great program, the SBA mentor program. So right now we have created a mentor protege project or program. We got to think about what that looks like in delivering it, because we have, I think, 40 or 50 mentor proteges that are coming online that we have to do something with right now. We were leaving it up to the contractors to do their own, so some of them are. So I said, long way to say, we got to really look at the mentor protege, how far we can build that out. And then I think I would say, if you press me for an answer, I would say that we would have to add some staff for that mentor protege program and some business development. Not to what extent depends on what this council wants to do in that function. So it would depend on that.
Thank you. Let's keep that conversation going to the chairwoman. I think that, business development, I also wouldn't want to find out that we have a very robust internship program that basically casts people out to the wind, that we're able to monitor them and maintain relationships and things. So there does seem to be a value to being intentional about what it would take to do that from a staffing component. I'm sure I've just blown over my time, so I will stop there.
Thank you, Councilmember Schleif. So just as we are coming to wrapping this up, a couple of questions. I'm going back to the public contracts portion. You can just break down these numbers, because I'm just doing some math, and I'm like, the math is not mathing. So this $232 million addressable spend, it was 91 contracts with goals. What are these numbers below? What is that? What are those?
Through the chair, the 12.3 is out of that 232 million, how much did we get MBE participation? 12 million. How much of FBE did we get? 33. And CSB was 97. So of that $232 million, those are the numbers we got in participation.
So that's where I was confused, because it doesn't.
I gotta do math now.
The math is not mathing. That's the part.
Is it the percentages?
No, it's when you do the 12.3, 33.7. I keep messing this up. 0.7 plus 96.7. It's 142.7. So that's why I was confused. I'm like, well, where is the other like 80 million, or is that? I'm just. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, you're expecting these numbers
Yes,
to
add up to that. So that's where I'm confused, because then I would ask, like, well, where is that 80 or so million, 90 million or so? Because somebody, that's what I'm saying. Explain, please.
To the councilwoman, those are to non-certified firms. So these are the commitments to certified firms. The 232 million is the universe of our addressable spend. And so the other dollars go to non-certified firms that are not certified, minority, female, or small business.
So keep in mind, there's 30% goal.
So I thought, say what you said. Could you repeat what you just said?
Yes, ma'am. So the other dollars go to non-certified firms, so firms that aren't certified. So that's where the extra
What does that mean?
that just means the firms that are not certified by our office. So majority-owned firms, larger firms, that's where those extra dollars are.
But okay, help me.
Sure.
So this is, again, I know what I might be missing something, because in looking at your total spend, it's the 80 million with no goals attached, but wouldn't that would also be in the non-certified group, correct? Based on
Yes-
what you're
yes,
saying?
ma'am.
So it's not 232 million addressable spend.
Director, do you-
I just,
Do you
you
mind if I
understand what I'm?
clarify?
Yeah, I'm just like, what am I missing?
To the councilwoman, so the $313 million are contracts that have gone through Board of Control approval. It's every public
Yes.
dollar that's spent.
Yes,
Of that, $80 million is taken out of that chunk before we even go to bid.
Correct.
Essentially, we've evaluated the contracts, we've identified where the opportunities for subcontracting are, and we say there are no opportunities on those contracts. So we're not going to have any minority, female, or small business spend on those contracts because there are no opportunities. And if we got them, it would be not because of there were 9 goals, right? We still count the numbers, but the point is that's why those are excluded from the pot right there. So what we have left is the $232 million. Those are contracts that went to bid, have subcontracting goals, and so we are actively monitoring and evaluating those bids. And of that 232 million, that's where you're getting the numbers beneath, the 12.3, the 33.7, and the 97.6. So there are multiple stages of OEO evaluation when it comes to opportunity and execution by the bidders.
And I'm grateful to our chairwoman for raising these questions. So that means we are saying that we don't, of the 232 addressable spend, we're not getting, how far along, what was your number, 147?
it's 80, the outstanding balance is 89.3 million.
So we're saying 89.3 million is not going to any of our certified. And actually, I have another, so I would love to hear more about the why. But I think I have a follow-on question, which is that, is there any chance that there's an overlap? In other words, are some of these counted twice? Like if what I mean is, through the chairwoman, is there a chance that these percentages are sort of inflated if you're both MBE and CSB or both FBE and CSB? In other words, how many total firms? It might be also helpful to see this as a breakdown of total firms as well, to really understand our impact.
To the councilwoman, on our annual report, it is broken down that way. This is a more high-level analysis. These numbers are accurate, but you are correct that there are contractors that are multi-certified that would show up in each one of these bins. So I can tell you for certain that if we were looking at MBE spend, you would have $12.3 million that go to firms that are certified as minority business enterprise, even if they are certified in other categories, and that would apply to all the other categories. When we complete our annual report, we do break this down so that it's very clear we do not have double counting. But as far as the, sort of the overall overview of actual commitments to certified firms, these numbers do represent certified firms in each of those categories. Does that make sense?
It does, and I want to defer back to our chairwoman to make sure that we're coming full circle on the question she was asking as well.
Yeah, I'm going to still get
Right,
to
okay.
that point. Okay, part of my questioning just goes to, even with the 80 million that's taken out, how much does the department do forecasting, right? Forecasting of understanding, we know for the paint in the water tower, I'll just do that. We know ever so often, however we paint this water tower, that it will come up. What opportunities are there to then have partnerships with business growth, business development, to look at where we know we are going as a city, to be intentional in creating opportunities or partnering with others to create the opportunities we know we are going to have based on the money that we have, even in the very niche things, right? If there is one company that paints the aircraft propeller, we know we're going to pay, like those type of things. I know that there's such a ripe opportunity for our government to create these opportunities. The reason being is because I do think that there is a problem that we spend so much money that goes into the economy, but we don't get the return on that, right? These companies don't live in our city. They aren't chartered in our city, but they get to take all of the resources from our city. And when we look at the contract and it is not reflective of the people of the city, that's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem, right? And regardless of what other court systems are saying, and again, this is a real thing. I do believe that this is a fight that is worth fighting for when it comes to real economic development in a system that was explicitly designed with certain groups in exclusion of it.
Definitely.
And if we do not come up with a real intentional, purposeful, on paper, just in previous years, generations where people were explicit of what they were doing to exclusion, we need to be just as committed of inclusion, right? Of real inclusion and ways, not just inclusion, of truly repairing the harm that has caused the generational poverty that we see in our city. That is a fight that we need to have, period. If that means going to the courts, we need to do that. If no one else does it, we need to do it in this day and time and before, because our people deserve it. And so we need to look at these contracts to see where are we going and how do we do it, not just because, and again, it's so disheartening at times when you look at a 12.3 MBE spend, right? Well, I could tell you how does that go to the time in my previous life when you looked at the disparity study that the Ohio Department of Transportation done. It was a disparity study that was done in 2016 that talked about, they went through all of the things, and what you will always see is black companies are always getting the short stick. Always.
That's correct.
They listed it as passive discrimination. Even when you have the case studies, black businesses, and I'm standing on black, right? Because black people in this country have been systematically cut out of economic opportunity that have led to the conditions that far too many Cleveland neighborhoods, black neighborhoods are experiencing to this day. And if the black city cannot help but change these conditions, what are we doing? Like we gotta just be for real on things. It is not okay for companies just to continue to enrich themselves while our people just are diminished. And we have to create these opportunities in very real ways. It's frustrating, you know? With being a person with the title, you see what's going on, and you're trying to come up with ways and suggestions to correct what you know is generational harms. So what I'm asking is that as we look through these numbers, like, we have to push ourselves to do more, because yes, the black community in Cleveland deserves that. They absolutely deserve that. And for people that hear this and feel like they have a problem with what I, Stephanie, am saying, I welcome the conversation. We can talk about facts. And I absolutely am going to stand on it that the city of Cleveland has a commitment that needs to have a real commitment to increasing this number, because 12.3 is not enough. And when you look at it in a disaggregated way, you will still see black businesses, again, underperforming, don't get the contracts for a variety of reasons. So, like, I'm going to get off this, but I hope for people can understand we need the real partnership. And this is an office that was designed to do that. And so that's why I'm really focused on, let's focus on these contracts, because there's such a ripe opportunity to help change the trajectory of Clevelanders' lives, whether those are Cleveland businesses as well as Cleveland residents, because they go hand in hand. And that can only benefit our city to be in a better position to deliver quality services to those who call Cleveland home. I'm going to transition in our final things as we talked about the future a bit. You talked a little bit, and you said right now you've gotten the last employees in the team. Can you talk about what positions were there? What positions were those positions?
Madam Chair, the positions are what we call our CBA, benefits staff are 4 compliance officers, so we are fully staffed. We had 2 of them when we started, and then we just recently, within the last 4 months, added 2 more. So they are feverishly working on, we have a lot of community benefits agreements that are coming through, and so they are doing a great, but they're flying the plane, they're fixing the plane while they're flying it. And so these things are coming in, we have the ARPA, CBAs, we had a lot of different things that we have to do and then create the process. So they are doing a great job of that. So we have 4 people doing that.
Okay. And then going to the no under the public contracts that you indicated does not include CDED projects. Is there a thought moving forward to be able to include the numbers, participation for our CD and ED projects, and what could that look like moving forward?
To the councilwoman, yes. When we publish our annual report, it will include the community development and economic development numbers. A vast majority of those numbers are included in the community benefits agreement numbers. Essentially, a lot of the projects, any project with more than $250,000 worth of city financial assistance is already calculated in the CBA numbers we shared today. There are a few projects that are less than $250,000 worth of city financial assistance that we will capture and make sure they're included as part of this. But again, a vast majority are included in the CBA contracts and so are already counted in some of the information we shared today.
And then finally, as you talk about the publishing of the annual report, do you all do an event where you talk about the annual report?
Through the chair, to the chair, no, we do not.
Okay, so you know what? I think this could be an assignment for 2025.
yes,
I know we're going to have a date. So once this annual report is published, and I am going to put on record, I would love for us to schedule, specifically have a hearing here with the Workforce Committee to be able to go over and put it on record, not just in print form, but conversations of how we're doing, what it looks like. I think that can be very insightful for those in Cleveland. So again, without any other questions, yes.
If, Madam Councilwoman, if you'll accommodate me just one quick moment.
No, I'm just
Just one quick moment, if you don't mind. There's 2 things I would like to bring up. One, all of your sentiments expressed earlier are very much appreciated, and I've worked with the Office of Opportunity for now 18 years. And one of the things we've been lucky enough to benefit from is an administration and a city council that is committed to this social equity component, even when other organizations may not have felt as politically motivated to do so. In a world in which a lot of these initiatives are under attack, it is very fortunate for this office to be able to operate in a world, in an environment where we're able to push the edges of this and to get as many benefits out of this as we can in that world. That is not the case throughout the country, and we're very lucky to be able to operate with that here. So thank you for that. The second thing I'd like to bring up is just as informational to you in particular. The Cleveland Police Headquarters project will have a public meeting 2 weeks from today. That's January 28th, 2025. The Office of Equal Opportunity currently just put it live yesterday. The online portal for all information regarding this project, where all compliance information, updates on the community benefits agreement, and other things are available. We will be happy to share that with you and the rest of City Council, but I did want to use this opportunity to advise you and everyone else of that event coming up in 2 weeks from today.
Well, thank you for that. I'm glad to know this is some of the things where they talk about institutional knowledge. So being able to have you here over the span of 18 years to be able to share that is a value that the city of Cleveland has to ensuring that we are doing our part to have real partnerships with, not only minority businesses, but say the thing, Black businesses, Hispanic businesses were lifted up. So I appreciate that. And then as you talk about the public meeting we will have regarding the Cleveland Police Headquarters, I am well aware of that meeting. People, if you are subscribed to my newsletter, you will get that information. And also, it will be a virtual option where it will be streamed because, again, we are going to meet people where they are, whether you can come there or not, depending on how the weather will be in 2 weeks. The information will still be put out there. But thank you so much for lifting that up. Without any other questions? Good. Okay, state comments.
Just a
Councilman
comment, Chair, to the director. Thank you. You guys really believe in your work. You're doing good work, and it's hard work, and it shows by the numbers. It does, it's unfortunate it does affect actual human beings. We just look at the numbers. But looking at it, see, especially through the union construction aspect, I appreciate the fact that you're looking to get businesses and raise them, especially the tide to raise all ships, look for, homegrown, too, Clevelanders. There's plenty of sisters and brothers out there that are working on a job site that have the capability to start a company beyond just a company getting bigger to get that $20 million. You just haven't had the help or somebody out there to tell them that they could do it. And the protege mentorship program, you definitely need to do that. And you need to have the proper people that have done the work overseeing it. So you will need more people for that. And this council will be happy to help you with that. And I look forward to, is Turner the CM on the jail? Who's your CM on the jail?
The police headquarters?
Who's the construction manager on the new jail? Is that Turner?
No, we don't have the jail. You mean the headquarters? The headquarters.
The headquarters, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilman.
Is Turner? Yeah, they're usually pretty good, but I look forward to seeing that. But thank you. You've done quite a bit. We're, as Milady House sounds like a union is sitting up there. But this is what we need to do. I'm a Cleveland resident my whole life, and there's plenty of times I wasn't working, and people from Rocky River and Westlake were working on skyscrapers down here, and it always frustrated me. And what this organization is doing is capturing everybody, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, without any further ado, again, thank you to the OEO team that's here. We appreciate all of that you all are doing to help us meet these goals that we have. Safe going home.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.